Hello, everyone, and welcome to the recovery. Before I get started, I want to take the time to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to stop and watch this video. It means a lot to me. I love the support that I've been getting so far, and I would love to continue to see the support not only sustain but grow. And one of the things that you all can do in order to help me maintain not only the sustainability, but help me further grow this audience that I'm hoping to receive is by taking the time to take your finger, hit that like button, hit that follow button, comment. I will always comment back. And it's free. Doesn't cost you a dang thing. The only thing it costs you is a click of a button. So thank you for doing that. Now, some of you may know me from personal life, whether it be work, childhood, different things like that, friends. Some of you might know me just from someone referred you to this page, or you know someone that I'm close to. And some of you might know me from the Feelings First Facts of the podcast. Either way it goes, I am happy that you all are here. Before I get any further into this video, I want to let you all know that this video is not going to talk about COVID-19 as far as my thoughts on it and or my opinions on the vaccine. This is simply going to be me sharing my personal experience with COVID-19 and dealing with all of the post side effects from COVID-19. Let's get into it. So I started to feel sick sometime around August the 2nd. I woke up that morning and I felt that I was experiencing just a bit of a sinus infection, nothing too serious. Had a little bit of a headache from pressure, a little bit of an itchy throat, but nothing that was too alarming at the time. So much so where all I did was simply take a little bit of Zyrtec, and I chalked it up to being in Florida, that maybe the pollen count's off, maybe because things are changing, this is what happened, or simply, hey, maybe it's just my time to just get the common cold. I don't know, because at that time it had been a while since I came down with any sort of common cold. So just kind of, at that point I was kind of expecting for it to come. Before I get any deeper into the topic of my experience with COVID, one thing that I want to point out is throughout my entire experience, everything happened in waves where I would start to feel better and I would start to feel worse, or I would start to feel different in a way to where it was very confusing as far as what exactly was going on during the entire experience. So day number 2 started off like any other normal day. I woke up, again, I'm thinking I'm experiencing maybe just a little common cold. So I take some sort of Dayquil just to kind of get through the day, make sure I'm not coughing, make sure I'm not feeling a little bit off. But I was able to function the day as if it was just any other day, just dealing with what I'm thinking is some sort of sinus infection. Around 4 p.m., I was on the phone with my girlfriend and I ended up hanging up the phone and I immediately started feeling cold. I didn't know exactly where it was coming from. I didn't know exactly what was going on. So I did what any person would do. I put a hoodie, put some sweatpants on. I lied down for a little bit. And at that time, I started shivering. Now, knowing what I know now, I should have known that, hey, there's something going on with you. Maybe you should check your temperature. But at the time, I was very ignorant to what was going on because prior to that, having a fever wasn't something that I was too concerned about. I can't even think of the last time that I had a fever until now. So luckily, I ended up falling asleep. I woke up a couple hours later. And at that point, I just felt really fatigued. So again, being ignorant to what was going on, I'm saying to myself, oh, well, you're fatigued because you've been shaking. Your muscles have been, twitching, firing, cutting off. So of course you're going to feel tired. So I ended up completing just some simple tasks around the house just to close the evening up. And I put myself back into bed very early, thinking that I'm going to wake up in the morning and everything was fine. And sure enough, I was right. I woke up in the morning and I felt great. I didn't feel like I was 100% myself, but I guess in comparison from what I had experienced the night before, I felt like I was in tip-top shape. So whatever happened must have been a fluke. It's going to be over with. So I go along my day like it's just a regular day. So now we're in day 3. Around 4 or 5 o'clock p.m., sure enough, after having a normal day, I noticed that I'm getting cold again. So I'm like, what is going on here? So, of course, I put on my sweatpants. I put on my sweatshirt. And what do? Lie down. Didn't think anything of it. I'm thinking, what's going on? Now, I should have taken the time to take my temperature. However, I did not. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I already did this before. I already know how to stop this thing. So let's just do what I did before. Everything will correct itself. Bang, boom, we're good to go. Now we're looking at day 4. Day 4 is when I really notice something's not right here. I get up in the morning. I feel better than I did the night before. So I'm feeling pretty hopeful for today. I go in my bathroom to brush my teeth. And all of a sudden, I notice that my toothpaste does not taste like my toothpaste. So here I am, knowing what I know about COVID-19. I think it's time for me to take a test to make sure I have it. So I end up canceling all my plans for the rest of the week. Early that day, I go and I take a COVID test. And sure enough, I test positive for COVID-19. Now everything is starting to make sense. So I end up paying a little bit more attention to what's going on with me, including checking my temperature, including checking my blood pressure, and all these other things that come along with it. Because again, at this point, I'm still feeling like I can do things, but I am noticing that I am a little bit more fatigued by performing simple tasks than I usually would be. So I started to get to the point during that day where I almost had to plan out everything that I was going to do, especially if it involved me standing up, because just getting up and going to the restroom at the time wasn't the easiest task to do. Not to mention, I completely lost my appetite, which I'm sure was associated to things not tasting properly, but also I just had no desire to eat. Now, I've had the opportunity to work with plenty of people, plenty of patients that have always expressed to me, I'm just not hungry. I just don't have an appetite. I just don't da. And in my brain, I'm going, well, I hear what you're saying, and I understand that this is the thing, but I don't understand exactly what you mean. But now, being in that experience, I understand exactly what that means. So knowing what I know and knowing that I need to fuel my body with food in order to convert that into energy, I found things that I could force feed myself. And one of the main things that I was doing was peanut butter on a bread and some honey, just to keep my sugar up, just to kind of keep my proteins up a little bit. But even that was a chore. It was not the easiest thing to do at the time. So sure enough, at around 4 p.m., I'm noticing that I'm starting to get hot. This time I'm paying more attention. So I get out my thermometer and I'm able to check myself. And sure enough, 104 degrees. Something's wrong here. Something's wrong. But I'm still not smart enough to take myself to the ER. I'm going, okay, I know what I need to do. Now I'm equipped with Tylenol. I'm equipped with ibuprofen. I'm going to take these things. I'm going to drink water. I'm not going to bundle myself up because I know that that is the wrong thing to do if you have a fever. Instead, I just kind of fought through it. And sure enough, once all the Tylenol and all the ibuprofen kicked in, my fever started to subside and I started to feel better. So here we are. We're looking at around Friday, Saturday time frame. Friday was a pretty rough day, pretty rough day. And at this time, I'm doing everything on my own, which I had already been doing everything on my own because I've kind of started self-quarantining myself even before I tested myself for COVID-19. But I'm noticing that starting doing tasks, especially on Friday, was very, very difficult to do. Went through the same pattern later in the evening, fever. I combated the fever, wake up the next day feeling a little bit better, thinking I could do a little bit more. And this is where I'm talking about the waves, where you feel like you're getting better, but then you crash, and then you're introduced to something new. And at this point, I'm introduced to the headaches, the pressure headaches. So Saturday for me was more painful than anything, because now not only am I dealing with fatigue and everything that came along with that, but I'm also dealing with the idea of this pressure headache, which to me was no fun at all. So as per usual, I just ended that night quickly, and I'm hopeful for the next day. So here we are, Sunday. Sunday was the big day. Sunday, August the 8th was not only my best day, but the day that I was admitted into the hospital. So I get up early in the morning because I went to bed very early. I'm already preparing myself. I know exactly what I need to do. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go into the kitchen. I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to try to get a little bit of food in my system. And this time was a little bit different. I'm noticing that as I'm walking to the kitchen, my steps, as far as walking, my coordination was completely off. I was not moving the way I should be moving. And as I'm approaching the kitchen, I'm noticing that I'm starting to feel like I'm about to pass out. I make it to my sink. I try to stop for a little bit and get a couple of breaths of fresh air in order to try to combat this feeling of about to pass out. But at some point I said to myself, I need to lie down, because if I don't lie down now, I'm going to fall down and I'm going to hit that floor. So being the clinician that I am, not only did I lie down, but I elevated my legs, laid there for a couple minutes, felt good again. I got up. I had a sugary drink just to make sure that it wasn't my blood sugars being off from not being able to eat. And after that, this was the best day that I've had so far. So much so, I'm not only able to cook myself a good breakfast, but I'm able to tidy up the house. My house was an absolute mess simply because I had no energy to clean up after myself. So anything that I was preparing, clothes and everything was just coming off, and I'm just worried about this later. So I'm able to clean up the house. I'm able to shower after a couple of days, and I'm able to actually get around and be motivated to doing things. So here I am on this upward slope, mentally thinking I'm out of the woods now. This is it. That was my grand finale. I got past that. Now everything's good to go. Around 1:00 p.m., my girlfriend shows up, and she hadn't seen me in a couple of days because, again, we kind of separated ourselves. I knew I was feeling sick. I didn't want to get her sick, even with the common cold, the idea that I had that. So I stayed away from her. But then, of course, after I tested positive for COVID-19, we really made sure that we stayed away from each other because I did not want that to carry over to her. But she ended up testing positive that day that she came over. So we figured, hey, we both have it. We might as well just be in this together and take care of one another, and yada, yada, yada. But I was still feeling good. I was able to get around, even though if you ask her, she said I look like a hot mess. But all that aside, I felt good. And I noticed that I'm probably look like a hot mess because I haven't been eating in the past couple of days. So I'm sure my skin is off. I haven't been outside, just looking like a straight up vampire. But in the inside, I felt good. So that was enough for me. A little bit later in the day, we both start feeling cold again. So I went upstairs, turned down the thermostat. I'm walking downstairs, and now I'm short of breath. Like, what is going on here? So I'm equipped with a couple tools because of the profession that I'm in. So I grab a pulse oximeter, I put it on my finger, and sure enough, I'm 84% oxygen. I'm literally desatting, just going up and down the steps, which is a very, very simple task for me, to say the least. Excuse me. So here I am. I'm finding myself having to take a seated rest break just to go up and down my steps. But I was able to recover my oxygen through taking a couple deep breaths in slow and then breathing normally. And I was able to recover. So in my brain, I'm in clinician mode at this point. I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, what do I do next? Let's perform a 5-minute walk test, see if this was a fluke, yada, yada, yada. Turns out it wasn't a fluke. So I made sure that I sat myself down for a little bit. Sat myself down, but luckily I did not take a nap. As I'm lying down on my couch, just kind of watching television and relaxing, I'm noticing that my breaths are getting very, very short. It's becoming harder and harder and harder for me to breathe. So I check my pulse oximeter, and now I'm desatted into the 64% range, which is absolutely horrible. And for any of you out there that doesn't know what I'm talking about when I'm referring to these numbers, they have machines where you can check your oxygen saturation level throughout your body, and the number range that you want to be in is 92 and above. And here I am at 64%. As a clinician, if I get a patient down to 87, 88%, I'm stopping whatever we're doing. We're taking a break, seeing if you can recover. If you can recover, great. If you can't recover, it's an issue. So here I am at 64%. I take one look at her and I say to myself and I say to her, I cannot do this on my own. I need to go to the hospital. So here we are trying to get to the hospital, and I'm finding it harder and harder to breathe. So much so, without even being dramatic, so much so that I'm thinking I'm taking some of the last breaths that I'm probably going to take. My breaths were very, very short, and sometimes they will pause. I wouldn't be able to get anything into me. Ended up making it to the hospital. I was able to walk in. Woman at the counter took one look at me. I showed her my pulse oximeter because it's on my finger. She immediately sat me down and gave me oxygen, which was literally a breath of fresh air. I immediately start feeling better. I want to say at that time, they put me on 4 liters of oxygen. They rushed me back to the hospital immediately, no questions asked. They start hooking me up to all sorts of things to help bring down my fever, bring my oxygen back up, bring my heart rate down. They're running chest x-rays, all this other stuff, all while preparing to send me to the actual hospital as opposed to the emergency room. So here I am, day 1 in the hospital. Well, waking up during the next morning in the hospital, and I'm feeling good. I'm on a high level amount of oxygen, or a high level of oxygen, but I'm feeling pretty good. I'm able to get up. I'm able to go to the restroom. I'm able to stretch my legs, walk around a little bit. My oxygen was staying at a good level, even though I wasn't on room air, but it was still staying at a good level of 4 liters of oxygen. Then all of a sudden, as they're moving me from one unit to another, I started losing my breath again. I can't breathe, even with the oxygen running down my nose. But I'm still trying to take the time to take deep breaths. I just could not. So once we get to the room, the doctor comes in, the nurses come in, everyone's freaking out. I'm freaking out. And they ended up cranking my oxygen up to 8 liters of oxygen just to keep me at around a 92, 94% range. So even with all of that oxygen, I'm still barely touching the surface. So at that point, I'm pretty much on bed rest. So I'm lying down all day long. The only thing that I refused to do was poop in a pan. So I made sure that regardless of how I was going to feel, I'm making my way to the toilet. No one is wiping me. I'm not going to leave a mess. But it is what it is. I was able to accomplish that. So kudos to that. But it was a very, very, very hard task to accomplish, so much so that they would have to crank me up to 10 liters of oxygen if they knew I was about to perform activities. So I sat on 8 liters of oxygen for at least 6 or 7 days out of the 12 days I stayed there before I was finally actually able to start tapering down, which then led to my discharge. But during those days, I wasn't doing much activity. I pretty much was lying down on my stomach, which helps you breathe a little bit better, helps get all the gunk out of your lungs. If I did sit up on the edge of the bed, I might have only been able to tolerate 2 minutes of sitting maximum before I needed to lie down. So if I wasn't on my stomach, I was either on my left side or my right side, just to kind of get my lungs to start working. But once I was able to get out of bed, which was probably around that day 7, day 8 range, I did not step back in that bed unless I was going to sleep. And that was one of the biggest improvements within my recovery. One of the biggest improvements once I was able to finally sit up and sit in a chair all day long. I started noticing immediately that I'm getting stronger and stronger. And of course, I'm obviously stronger because I am able to sit up, but I'm noticing that every day I'm able to do a little bit more, to include maybe doing a couple of laps around the room. I'm noticing that it's getting easier for me to get up and go to the restroom, getting easier to brush my teeth, getting easier to eat. So I'm noticing that I'm getting stronger. And of course, throughout the time of my hospital stay after that, they were able to crank down my oxygen, so much so where I was comfortable again on 4 liters of oxygen until the day I left. So here we are. We're looking at August 20th, which is the day that they finally discharged me. And that day they were able to see that I was comfortable with maintaining my oxygen saturation levels on 2 liters of oxygen with no activity. So an agreement was made that if I go home, I will make sure that I'm on 2 liters at least, which I'm still on today. I'm on 2 liters of oxygen at rest, not doing much. But then if I'm going to perform activities, which was going to be very limited because I was able to come home to a lot of love and a lot of support, I had to crank it up to 4 liters of oxygen. I said, fair enough, let's get out of there. I want to pause for a second, and I want to say that everyone in the hospital was very, 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 very good to me. Very, very good to me. They all paid attention to me. They answered my question, and they were able to do it working at this high speed that they were working in. I know what they're going through because I'm a clinician, so I understand that outside of my 4 walls, it's a ton of commotion. But anytime that they step foot in my 4 walls, it was a blessing. I'm very, very grateful for everyone. My only gripe about the hospital are 2 things. A, you cannot sleep in a hospital. During my entire stay for the 12 days, I want to say the most amount of sleep that I received at one time was about maybe 4 or 5 hours. And this is at night. Now, my sleep, a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was on all sorts of medication for days, including medication to combat the coronavirus. I was on a high amount of steroids, which kept me up all night long. And I was on blood thinners. So there's a lot of things going on. So getting sleep was very impossible. They tried to counter the steroids with a sleep aid. Didn't quite do the job. Steroids are pretty powerful. So even if I fell asleep, I wasn't able to sustain sleep, which played a huge effect on, I believe, my recovery. But I will say this, I never felt tired, which I guess is to be expected. If you're on such a high amount of steroids, you're probably not going to get too tired, which I really didn't. So it wasn't like I was sitting around all day feeling like, oh my God, I didn't get any sleep. What do I do? I actually felt pretty fine throughout the day. My other gripe, food. The food. I would love to be able to sign some sort of petition in order to support better food for the people in the hospital. Prior to going into the hospital, I was a very, very, very healthy eater. I have never eaten so bad in my life in years until I spent those 12 days in the hospital. The food that they fed me was not the most nutritious food. Not a lot of fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and the quality was pretty low, which I'm sure plays a big part in people's recovery, is maintaining a healthy diet, especially if you're someone that was on the extreme where you're already eating entirely healthy and now you're having to go back to eating a poor diet. It did not help. But I say all that to say this. My experience in the hospital overall was great. So thank you for any healthcare providers out there. You are appreciated. You are appreciated. The biggest improvement that I saw was when I was able to go home and be around people that love me, support me, and being able to actually take the time to rest. Since I've been home, it seems like every day is just a big leap, big leap, big leap in the right direction. One of the main things that I battle with now, obviously, is oxygen and not being able to do some of the things I was able to do before. And if I am able to do them, it requires a lot more effort. So this recovery story is really going to focus heavy on my breathing, being able to hopefully go to room air soon, being able to perform higher level tasks on maybe little to no oxygen. But another thing that was a very humbling experience for me was looking at my body and seeing how much toll my body took throughout this entire process. While I was in the hospital, I had the luxury of being able to avoid mirrors entirely. And mainly because there's not many mirrors to look in, but I'm not really moving around too much. And if I am in front of the mirror, it's just to brush my teeth. But as far as undressing myself and seeing my body, I was able to avoid that until I got home. Needless to say, when I did finally look at my body, I was kind of already prepared that I was going to see a drastic change, because going into the hospital, I was around 196, 198 pounds of a pretty healthy human being. And the numbers that I was receiving from the reports from the nurses, I'm around 186 pounds now. So doing the math, I automatically knew that I'm not going to see the same man that I'm seeing today. So having to actually come to the realization that I'm not going to look like the same person that I am, it was a very, it took a toll on me. It took a toll on me, to say the least. Now, I'm more concerned about my breathing than I am about my physical appearance. But there's something to be said about you living your entire life worrying about fitness, worrying about how you look, worrying about being healthy, and you think you're good to go. But then something like this hits you, and then everything that you put towards could just easily be stripped away from you like that. And now you find yourself trying to get back to that person that you were. So as you can see here in this image, this is what I look like sometime before COVID-19. Wasn't too far from it, but I was a pretty fit guy. I was in shape, and I was able to do a lot more than I'm able to do today. This image here is what I look like today. So I'm lacking a lot of muscle tone. My posture isn't exactly what it used to be. And things that you probably can't see on camera, my skin, the quality of my skin is not the same. The texture is a little bit off. I'm noticing that I'm getting a lot more acne in places that I was before, which I'm sure a lot of that just has to come with just the fight that my body was going through. Obviously, it's going to sacrifice all those things to protect the most important things, my organs. But I want to take the time to show you this just to see exactly what it could look like as far as what physical appearance toll that being sick and trying to recover does to your body. So before I wrap this up, I want to take the time to give you all a little bit of tips and tricks on things that you all can do to prepare your home in the event that you do get sick, whether it be COVID-19 or anything for that matter, in order to prepare yourself a little bit better to know exactly what's going on with you. A couple things that you should have around the house in order to be able to monitor your vital signs and make sure everything is going well with you is a thermometer. Thermometer is very important. I'm sure a lot of you have it at home. If you do not purchase one, or if you do not have one, purchase one. If you do have one, use it, and use it early on. Don't do what I did and just assume that everything was okay, because if I would have known that I was having back-to-back fevers from day one, I might have found myself checking myself into the ER at the very least, just to see if there's anything that they could do for me besides the routine that I was doing, which was working, but it felt like it was more of a band-aid than anything. Another thing you should equip yourself with is a pulse oximeter. This little gadget here, you can put around your finger, you press the button, and it will tell you your heart rate and will also tell you your saturation levels of oxygen that is going through your body, which for me would have been a tool that could have been used earlier on. At the time, I didn't know what was going on, but when I knew. Luckily for me, I did have one of these devices. For some of you out there, most of you out there that do not have one, don't find yourself at a disadvantage where you don't know what's going on with your vital signs because you do not have one of these sitting around the house. Go ahead and make that purchase. And again, if you have it, utilize it. Another thing that you could take advantage of in your home is having a blood pressure cuff, something that you can have around the house. Check your blood pressure. If you're feeling a little bit off, you can kind of track what's going on. And even having like a little medical journal where you kind of write down some of the numbers that you are typically at. So then you can compare yourself from what a healthy version of you looks like and a version of you that might be dealing with some sort of illness. Being able to track all that, even though it could be a little bit time consuming, take the time to understand what's going on with your body in order to be able to better equip yourself and understand when it's time, when enough's enough, when enough's enough. So now a couple other simple things you can have around your house, which a lot of you probably already have. Make sure you're equipped with water. You're equipped with things to help rehydrate you, replenish your electrolytes. One of the things that I did experience with the coronavirus is I noticed that it was very hard for me to actually stay hydrated. Partly it had to do with just lack of motivation, lack of energy, but it felt like I didn't have enough going through my system in order to remain hydrated. So having water is a good thing to have. Little snacks around the house, maybe something with kind of a neutral flavor, something that's not too salty, not too sweet, especially if your taste buds are off because of COVID-19. Just having that quick fix around can help get you through that lack of appetite that you may or you may not feel, or even if you do have the appetite, but you just don't have the desire to eat because of how things taste. And more importantly, seek medical attention sooner than later. Seek medical attention sooner than later. I do think it's possible that if I wasn't so stuck in my head that I could do this myself, if I would have taken the time to at least go to the ER, maybe they had medication for me, something I could take to help combat the inflammation that I was experiencing. I think if I did that, then I might not have gotten to the point that I gotten to. Now, for women out there, I'm sure it's probably easy for you all to just step into an ER. But for men out there, just understand that it's okay to seek medical attention early on, because at the very least, they'll sit you down. They'll say there's nothing wrong with you, and they'll send you home. And then you have the peace of mind of knowing that you at least did that, as opposed to doing nothing and you find yourself in muddy waters. And also keep in mind that even though I do not wish this upon anyone, keep in mind that this can happen to you. Realistically, I knew at some point I was going to contract the virus because of just how the virus is spreading, my lifestyle as a clinician, being around people with COVID-19. So I wasn't ignorant to the fact that at some point I was going to contract the disease. However, I never would have thought in a million years that this would happen to me. I was banking on my immune system, banking on my level of fitness, banking on my just overall health, but it did happen to me. So I say all that to say this: do not walk around with the mindset that this would never happen to you, because I did that. But I had to go through this experience to understand that I can be the statistic. So I don't want to end on a dark note, but thank you for taking the time to sit here and listen to me ramble. Again, I would love and appreciate if you not only follow Mr. underscore 1031, but if you would like, comment, I will respond to you. And I will also have these videos posted on Instagram, which I would end up linking somewhere in the description once I'm up and running. Thank you for listening.